My name is Eric Stevens, and I am the founder of a little company called Z Paper here in the Roswell area. And I also have the opportunity to be at Roswell United Methodist Church. I'm in the choir. My wife is on staff, and for the last 4 or 5 years, I've gotten more and more involved in the men's ministries at RUMC and in the area. And so it is my pleasure to be able to have some inspirational things to say today. And when I submitted the title of my talk here this morning, several people said, well, what's the difference between the present and now? Don't those mean the same thing? And so it is not a typo. I really want to spend a few minutes uncovering some of the things that have helped me sort of stay on the right path. I am a recovering rocket scientist. And what I mean by that is I have a Georgia Tech aerospace degree from about 30 years ago, before the internet was born. And I tend to make things too complicated. I'm an engineer. I like to worry about things. And when I look up this definition for the word now on dictionary.com, it says the present time or moment. And, therefore, these must be the same thing. Right now and the present must be the same. But as with many things on the internet, just one point of reference is not good enough. And so if we take a little bit of a hint from the Bible, there's a wonderful scripture in Matthew. It's in Matthew chapter 6. If you go to the front of that chapter, you'll find it says, "Don't worry" is often the label for that chapter. And given that I tend to be a worrier, this was a very instructive passage for me. So Matthew chapter 6, verse 33 talks about seek ye first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given unto you. And you're like, well, what are these things? What's he talking about there? And as I went back and I looked at that scripture, I realized that the list of things that will be given unto me are the things I normally worry about. Maybe it's a deadline. Maybe it's a business situation that's going on. Maybe it's a health issue in my family. And so I thought, what a great chapter for us to take a look at. And so because this is a job networking event, I thought, well, let's take a look at this scripture with the job networking strategy. So we're going to do this kind of like it's an interview. And in an interview setting, there's several things you want to get done. You want to make certain that at the end of it, do they know, am I credible? Was there a reason that you wanted to interview me? Am I capable? Can I do something that is of use to the person interviewing me? And then importantly, would you recommend me for whatever I am being interviewed for? And so today, I want to take that strategy and take a look at this passage about God's kingdom. I've been a business owner for about 15 years. So I'm fairly credible when it comes to being able to talk about interviewing and recruiting. It's a big part of my job. And because we're a small company, part of what we have to decide pretty quickly is this new person going to be a good fit for our family? And part of what that person is trying to decide is, can they risk their family on what Z Paper is like? That first impression when you're first in an encounter with somebody, be it over Zoom or in person, it only takes about 30 seconds, and you almost instantly have this sense of, do I want to spend more time getting to know them? And so part of what I do when I approach that type of situation is I am looking for something that shows their character. And so part of the way I show my character to them is in that setting, and like this setting today, the person who's right across from me, the people on the other end of this Zoom today, they are my version of God's kingdom. That's the way God is presenting himself to me today, is in this interaction with folks. And so the first thing I want to do is be authentic with them and let them know I'm a human being and I'm nervous and they're nervous, and we're going to be nervous together, because I believe in those moments, God really can show up. And I've seen this happen in other people's lives too. And so I'm going to bring an example today. It's a friend of mine that I got to know his senior year of high school, which was about 5 years ago. His name is Kyle. And Kyle started a degree at Georgia Southern in music 5 years ago. So guess what? Kyle just graduated. And Kyle has a degree for music education. And for the last several months, he's been looking for his first real job. Now, it's a tough time. It is a tough time to be looking for work. The world is different than the world he went into college anticipating when he got out. And as I tried to keep in touch with him over the years, and as I saw him starting to approach his job search, I wanted to see, how is he doing? Is he worrying about life? Is he panicked about what's going on in his life? Or where is he in his relationship and his walk with God? I got to know him as a part of RUMC's youth program. And so, I had a real vested interest in Kyle and where he was headed. And what was interesting is Kyle had already discovered the difference between the present and now. Kyle's gift is in music. And part of how Kyle always keeps God in the now is through music. And what I saw happen in his life is, as he realized that, whenever he was in a classroom situation as a part of being interviewed or as a part of his day-to-day internships, he brought his authentic self to that situation. And the students could feel it. And he was very much in the now with them. And as he found that happening in himself, I realized how important it is at any age that we separate the now, our moments of joy, and our sense that we are exactly where God has placed us for right this moment. And that separates us from the list of things that may be in our present situation that we tend to worry about. And so it was exciting to see him do that. Well, the rest of the scripture makes a promise. The promise is, if we seek his kingdom and his righteousness, then all these things will be given unto you as well. And then God tells us how to do that. Do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. Well, I can certainly testify to the truth of that. It seems like no matter how prepared I might be for an interview or a deadline, something always seems to come up. God does not promise us the Garden of Eden. We kind of lost the option to be in the Garden of Eden a long time ago. But what I have learned is that when God, if you give room for him, God will show up and he will make just the way you see the situation different. So I hope I've established a little bit of credibility as someone who is experiencing God in the now, and who has seen others find their own sense of now. But what is this skill that helps you build a sense of now? Are we capable of doing something about our worries? If you only take one thing away from today's talk, I really want you to have a better way to manage the natural anxieties about worrying. There are real problems going on. They're real things. But worrying is not your only strategy for finding a better outcome. And I think God shows up and he teaches us how not to worry. But how does he do that? What skill can we learn that helps us bring God into the now and helps us push a lot of the worries to the side? Well, those muscles require getting in shape. So I developed, for my own personal well-being, a set of choices that I go through in any given situation. So the skill that I've tried to pick up, the thing that I've tried to become capable of doing, is in any given moment, find the choice that I get to make in that moment. And that moment might be the difference between being grumpy and grateful, between feeling interrupted and having an opportunity to interact with somebody that I didn't expect. Now, I don't always do it. And there are many times where I fail, and, I just have to admit, the situation got the better of me. But on the times that is a fresh experience to me, God reaches in and helps me shape the whole rest of the day. I look for things in my day to therefore build those muscles up. I mean, you have to practice this. You don't want to wait until you're running your Olympic trials to see if you can actually run a 100-yard dash in less than 10 seconds. You need to practice that. And so I've learned to look for things in my everyday that God shows up in. And I'll give you a simple example, and I'm going to encourage you to try and find these own examples in your life. The sound of my wife making coffee in the morning is such a simple thing, but it reminds me of how she cares for me and how we look forward to that first cup of coffee together where we talk a little bit about what we're anticipating that day. And if I hear the grinder go off on the coffee beans, I know that smell is a few minutes away. And I look forward to that. And it reminds me that even though it's something that we do every day, there's a specialness to that. There's an intentionality to that. Maybe it's the sound of somebody coming home in the afternoon, somebody coming home from school or from work. And it's just a chance for you to break away from whatever your present was and find a little bit of God in the now. I think God gives us so much love, and he places it in the people that we're across from. And so it's interesting how we get introduced to those people who can bring God into our life. I'm doing okay here on time, I think. I've got another example. Believe it or not, it came out of a situation where I was interviewing somebody, and it turned, and the role got reversed. We were looking for a technical writer. And that technical writer, we were choosing between two folks, and eventually we chose just one. And a week or so later, a person who had been helping the technical writer who didn't get the job called to find out, well, what could they have done different? What could they have done differently? And so I took the call, and what I was amazed by is how quickly this person got to know me. He did a marvelous job getting to know me. And so very quickly, I wanted to learn more about this person. He had proven to me he had the sort of credibility that let him establish himself with me, even though he was calling on behalf of somebody else. Well, it turns out he has this amazing skill. His name is Steve. He has this amazing skill to talk to you on the phone and find out what's really going on with you. Not just what you pretend is going on with you, but a little bit about that. He related to me. We had both gone to Georgia Tech together. And it turns out he was exactly the person. He started interviewing me, and I realized that day that we needed to bring Steve into our company as a chief growth officer because of the way he helped me identify my own difficulties communicating with people on my staff. And so those sort of introductions are my way of saying, hey, God just showed up. Steve has this amazing gift in the now to find out what's really going on in your head and connect it to God in a useful way. And it's just super exciting when that happens. So we talked a little bit about, am I credible? We've talked a little bit about this skill of developing the muscles of choosing between grumpy and grateful, between interrupted and patient. I know you're going to have some other words for that. Your words are going to be different than mine because the way you see God's kingdom is different than the way I see God's kingdom. So I would like to actually request that you show up at an event. I am a part of what I do at RUMC is host a men's breakfast, and we have a men's breakfast next week. It's on Thursday morning, and we're going to have some table discussion at that time. And I'd really like to challenge you to come up with, for a week, try looking for the now in your settings every day. Look for moments of now in the midst of your busyness, in the midst of your job search, in the midst of how you interact with family. So, what is the difference between the now and the present? Well, the present is just what you think it is. It's that list of responsibilities and worries that keep us up at night. But for me, and I hope for you, the now means the moments that God shows up and we can see him in our daily life. It's sort of our daily spiritual bread. In those now moments, we get these little glimpses of God in the very essence of what we're doing when we choose to. And he can help us choose between grumpy and grateful. finding those words, whatever the triggers are with you, and building those muscles so that you can establish that discipline and that habit of choosing grateful over grumpy. Once again, you need to find your words. But in Matthew, God guarantees real world results. When we seek his kingdom, when we look for it in the moments and in the people that we are constantly being exposed to. I'm not saying it'll happen for you every day, but I hope if you'll apply yourself, you can find these moments of God in your day to day and in your day tomorrow and for every tomorrow. And it will help you manage the worries that are very real, but they are not as real when you have God by your side. And he can help you find these moments, and you'll find them in your family, and you'll find them in the people that you interview with, and they will see your character. They will see the fact that they want you to be a part of their work family too. So thank you so much for allowing me to come before you today and share a little bit of how God keeps this recovering rocket scientist from making life too complicated. All my to-do lists do not stand up against God showing me that my wife and others love me by doing the simple stuff and keeping us connected together.